of State. As we know, we've got some very big AI moments coming up in the next couple of weeks with the Bletchley Park Summit, but also the UK is at a wider crossroads generally, that we know that generative AI is causing disruption across the piece, economically and socially, and we want to make sure the UK and its government can harness the power of that to unleash growth and prosperity across the country, but also, of course, thinking about the safety elements, as I think we would all agree, it would generally be a good thing if AI does not erase humanity. So we are delighted to welcome the Secretary of State for Science, Michelle Donlan, who will be speaking in a moment. But before then, I would like to introduce our kind sponsors for this event. We've got Professor Mary Ryan from Imperial College London, who's going to say a few words for the Secretary of State. So Mary, thank you very much.
Thank you, Seb, and thank you all for joining us today. So I don't think I need to say to this room that AI technologies are ushering in a transformation, unparalleled potential to reshape industries and society at large, and really providing opportunities to accelerate disruptive innovation across multiple sectors. The government's AI Safety Summit next week is going to be an important milestone in our thinking around how we have safe AI, the risk associated with frontier AI, and to start global coordination efforts, and we're really looking forward to some of the conversations and outputs of that summit, so thank you. Before I introduce the Secretary of State, I'd just like to say a few words really about the role of universities in this space, and how we can think about helping develop safe tools for AI-driven innovation in partnership with industry and policymakers. Universities like Imperial, I'm sure you know, are home to deep technical expertise, and they're going to play an important role in this transformation. They're innovative, dynamic environments that really can spur on innovation from foundational AI. At Imperial, we have multiple initiatives that really support AI across all our sectors and disciplines. The AI Network is home to more than 300 academic PIs with 1,000 PhDs and postdocs from across all of our faculties and disciplines working to accelerate the safe and productive development and deployment of AI. The science of data is not to be forgotten. The way data is collected, the way it's curated and utilized is really critical to the development of large language models and frontier AI. And our Data Science Institute provides foundational expertise in data science and engineering. And our most recent initiative, the IX Digital Foundry at Imperial, is home to 100 researchers and over 30 new projects in AI and innovation across multiple sectors, from manufacturing to climate science to new drugs. Really, AI sits across every discipline you can think of in a university and every sector you can think of in industry. Of course, we're also home to education, and training the next generation of technical experts is part of our remit. We are really proud to host the UKI Centre for Doctoral Training in AI for Healthcare, which is a nearly £50 million investment from UKRI over 10, 12 years of training, both technical expertise and clinicians in the use of AI. And we're a partner in the UKRI Safety and Trusted AI, CDT, as well. Based on our experience of innovation, and we do quite a lot of that at Imperial, the development and employment really needs us to challenge thinking about regulation. And I want us all to challenge a perception of regulation from policing to enabling. Our shared challenge, I think everyone in this room and listening, is to combine safety, trust, and security into a framework that adds to our AI-driven innovation system, drawing on deep experience of science and tech policy work, bridging cutting AI research, industry adoption, and I'm choosing my words carefully, pragmatic policy tools. We know AI is driving tools to accelerate innovation like never before, and we're talking, I think, at a pace that we're not used to thinking about. We're talking about years, not decades, for innovation impact. And we're already starting to see AI as a reality in many sectors: medical diagnostics, digital twins in manufacturing, smart energy grid manufacturing. It's already being deployed at scale and at pace. And in this context, I think a key part of a university's role is to create a safe, neutral space where we can start to test novel approaches to governance, through dedicated sandboxes and AI, where AI solutions can be refined, developed, and deployed. We need a unique, I think, and broad group of stakeholders to do that. So universities by themselves are not going to deliver it. We need to bring in policy framework, industry stakeholders, investors, and society. Only by bringing all this expertise together will we really develop guidelines and frameworks that can specifically enable safe, productive, and accelerated innovation. And I think if we do that right, we will get the two key criteria that are going to be really important: societal trust and investor and industry confidence that this is the place to do it. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about the AI strategy and the AI summit from the Minister. I really want to thank you all for joining Imperial and Onward for this event, and I'm really looking forward to an interesting and stimulating discussion. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, the Right Honourable Michelle Donlan. Michelle.
Thank you very much. And firstly, also let me say a massive thank you to Onward. I said when I first launched this new and exciting department that people could expect to see a constant drumbeat from action from my officials, from my ministers, and from my entire team. But I didn't quite expect Onward to rise to the challenge as well. From your brilliant report on generative AI earlier this year to Alan Nixon's report on Wired for Success, which also gave us an insight into DCIT ourselves and illuminated the picture across Whitehall. I hear through the grapevine that another AI report is in the works, so I do look forward to seeing that in the coming weeks. I think it's safe to say that the world is wide awake to the opportunities, but also the challenges that AI presents. In the last 3 years alone, MPs have mentioned artificial intelligence in the House of Commons more than they have in the entire 30 years before. And when I stood up to give my first speech as Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, I made it clear that we were going to do things differently and we were going to be different. So when it comes to AI, I think this is especially important because DCIT cannot afford to be a business as usual Whitehall department, nor can we deliver extraordinary things in this space without extraordinary people in our team. We, of course, need to be agile, innovative, and accessible, just like the entrepreneurs and the businesses that we represent and the researchers across the nation. So I'm pleased to report that that's exactly what we've achieved. Over a matter of just a few months, we've added world-renowned AI experts into our department and into our task force. From renowned AI professors like David Kruger and Yaron Gal, to the godfather of AI, Yoshua Bengio. These are the minds that we have now on board, helping us to not only shape our AI policies, but also to deliver them domestically and on a global stage. With our skills, our Frontier AI Task Force, and of course our AI Global Summit, it is clear that the UK really is perfectly placed to lead on the international stage on seizing the opportunities of AI and of course gripping the risks. However, today I want to get beyond the statistics to go deeper into the philosophy that is driving our approach on AI. Many of you will have heard me talk about AI safety being the UK's priority and how we can only truly utilise the extraordinary benefits that AI offers if we are to tackle those challenges in a safe way in relation to the frontier. To some, this might well sound overcautious, or that we are driven by fear, or the risks have captured us, but actually, I think it is rather about the opportunities that we are focusing on. So today, I want to smash the myths that have emerged. Here at Onward, I want to set out how the UK's approach to safety and security in AI will actually make us the best place in the world for new AI companies to not only grow, but also to locate here. Safety and security are key to unlocking innovation. The country which tackles key AI safety risks really will be the first to fully take advantage of the huge potential that AI has to provide. That is why the UK is putting more investment into these questions right now than any other country in the world. Questions like, how do we prevent the misuse of frontier AI by malicious actors? How do we ensure that we don't lose human control and oversight of this new technology? And how can we protect our society, including our democratic system? Think about how air travel, once considered a very dangerous new technology by many, is now one of the safest and most beneficial technologies in human history. And we got there by working with countries across the world to make sure that we had the right safety mechanisms in place, and now we all reap the benefits of flying safely. Safety is absolutely critical to unlocking adoption across the economy and across society. So boosting consumer confidence is what will really make the difference between a country that takes a few years to adopt to AI technology versus a few decades. And I want to make sure that the UK is at the forefront of reaping the benefits of this transformative technology. So our approach on AI has been actually commended for being agile, for being nimble, for being open, and being innovative. And that's certainly what we continue to do and will continue to do. But we need more research, of course, to guide our approach. In many cases, we simply just don't understand the risks in enough detail or certainty right now, because this is an emerging technology that is developing quickly, quicker than any other technology in human history. Let's think about it. It took mankind just over a lifetime to go from the horse and cart to the space race. But look at large language models. In just 4 years, we've gone from them being barely able to string a sentence together to now passing the bar exam, passing medical exams, and who knows what the next set of models have to hold. So the pace of development is fast and unpredictable, which means that our focus needs to be on understanding the risks. And in life, I do think it's important that you truly grip the problems before you slap on solutions. And with AI, it should be no different. That is why we established the Frontier AI Task Force, why we appointed a world-leading research team to turbocharge our understanding of frontier AI with expert insight. The task force is already making rapid progress, forging partnerships with industry and developing innovative approaches to addressing the risks of AI and harnessing its benefits. The Global AI Safety Summit in just over a week is also an opportunity to build that understanding, that shared learning, and to establish a network globally to work together to ensure that our research can keep up with the transformative emerging technology. Indeed, one of the key objectives of the summit is to form an agreement on what the actual risks are and how we can work together to keep up to date with that. By bringing countries together, leading tech organizations, academia, and civil society, the UK will lead the international conversation on frontier AI. The global nature of AI, of course, means that international concerted action is absolutely critical. AI doesn't stop at geographical boundaries, and nor should our approach. But of course, we do also need to make sure that we have the right domestic way forward and approach in place to drive safe, responsible AI innovation. Earlier this year, we set out our principle-based approach in the AI regulation white paper. Our approach is one that is nimble, targeted, and sector-focused. We here in the UK, we understand that AI use cases are drastically different across different sectors. A one-size-fits-all system that treats agri-tech the same way as military drones because they both use AI is not only unreasonable, but also undeliverable. By empowering existing regulators to regulate AI in their own sectors, where they have their own expertise and insight, we have created the most tailor-made and responsive regulatory regime in the world. And we have supported different sectors with a central risk function, which is in effect horizon scanning to support our regulators. Now later this year, we will publish a full response to the white paper, showing how our approach is going to keep pace with this transformative technology. So what does this all mean for small businesses? The regulatory approach set out in the white paper is specifically designed to be flexible, support innovation, and ensure that small and new challenger AI companies can grow, but also succeed here in the UK. And indeed, we're already taking steps to deliver on those aims by working with the Digital Regulation Cooperation Forum to pilot a new advisory service for AI and digital innovators so that companies can bring together their products more quickly and safely to market. We want the UK to remain one of the most nimble and innovative places in the world for AI companies to grow. And that's why it is right that we reaffirm our commitment to our principle-based approach to regulation, whilst of course taking bold steps to address the risks in the frontier, investing in world-class research capabilities and working closely with industry and civil society to make sure that our AI governance approach actually keeps pace. Our proportionate and targeted approach will enable us to foster innovation and encourage companies to grow and to catch up to the frontier. Because we're not pulling up the drawbridge. In fact, what we want to do is give consumers and the public confidence to boost adoption and to ensure that we can seize these opportunities in a safe way. So far from a race to the bottom, the key AI developers across the world here in the UK are telling me that they're looking for countries where they can see certainty, clarity, and support when it comes to building and deploying AI safely. They want a mature, considered, and agile approach to AI that maximizes the potential for innovation by mitigating the risks. They want to open up in countries where consumers are open-minded and excited about the use of AI tools to improve their lives, which is why with the Global AI Safety Summit, we're not just talking about the risks, we're also talking about the opportunities and how we can seize them for the benefit of mankind. And the proof really has been in the pudding when we look at the UK. If we look at the likes of OpenAI, Anthropic, they've opened their international offices here. I want the UK people to use AI with the same confidence and the lack of fear that they do when they book a plane ticket. And I want AI companies to know that the UK is the most up-to-date, agile, and economically rewarding place in the world to build their businesses in. So to all the smaller AI companies out there, let me send this message out today that the UK is and will remain the most agile and innovative place to develop your business. Safety at the frontier means prosperity across the sector. We will grip the risks and we will seize those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm just going to use... Are we okay there? Good. I was going to just use Chair's prerogative before we throw it out to the audience to pick up on a couple of points you raised there, Michelle. So first of all, obviously, you talked about DCIT not being a department as usual. The fact is that, as you highlighted, LLMs are moving very quickly. Generative AI is going to develop at a particularly increasingly rapid rate. How do you make that work differently within Whitehall? Because obviously there are the structures of the civil service, the structures of the department, the normal ways of doing policy making. Is there a particular strategy you're thinking about trying to just how you move quicker?
In terms of deployment of AI across Whitehall itself, I think it is important that government leads by example and that we embrace this technology in a safe way. And that's certainly what we've been doing. We've been doing some sprints, if you like, as to how we can adopt AI in different ways. The Cabinet Office a few weeks ago led on a hackathon where civil servants from across the board came together with lots of innovative ideas, from use of AI with procurement, for instance, to supporting ministers. And I do think it is important that we're leading by example, so we're certainly doing that.
And then as well as that, on the policy making piece, of how you actually make AI policy, you'll bring the summit together next week to highlight where the UK wants to lead on that, but how do you react to that in terms of making general AI policy as well as using AI day to day?
Yeah, so in terms of our policy development, I think this is an area that there are very few people in the world that properly understand frontier AI. In fact, you could in fact fit them into one carriage of a train, some people say. So the world's really leading experts, and that's why we've been trying to poach them and cajole them into supporting our mission in government, both with our advisory board for the task force and also getting people on secondment into the department itself, so that we have that hub of knowledge and expertise from people that have been working in the sector. We've also tried to be really open and accessible to those that are experts in the field, both in civil society. Just the other week I was holding a round table with the likes of Ada Lovelace and Turing, etc., with think tanks and with businesses as well, so that we're in listening mode to try and make sure that we get this right.
Now, with regards to the summit, obviously, this is a major moment for the UK, for the government, all the rest of it. You know, again, you talked about, you know, thinking about malicious actors with regards to AI policy. You know, how much effectively can the UK do about this? Because it is a tricky one, that we can talk about the values and the instincts and things we want to do, but we can't necessarily control what other people do with that.
Yeah, what we've done is we've identified three key categories of risk. One of them is around loss of control. So, for instance, the AI self-proliferates. One of them is around societal harms, which could include things like disinformation, impact on elections. And then the other one is the one that you've just identified, so misuse. Now, that could be by a state actor, a hostile state actor, or it could be by an individual. So it could mean a cyber threat or a bio threat. And that's why it's important that we are not just acting in silos domestically, but we're working collectively globally. That's why the Global Safety Summit is so important, that we get around that table and we have this discussion. We agree, okay, what guardrails need to be put in place, but also that we get companies to do more in this space as well, so that they are injecting more safety into the system in addition.
And as with all these summits, there's the formal summit, but then all the back channeling that happens in advance of it. And with that, what's the sense you've got from our allies and maybe not so allies about how they view it? Do they have a broadly same shared vision as the UK in terms of how you tackle this?
Yeah, so something that people often get a bit confused about is there's been lots of global conversations on AI, and I don't want to pretend that there hasn't been, like the Global Partnership on AI, like the OECD's work, like the Council of Europe's work, you know, the list goes on. What there hasn't been is this really specific and in detail conversation on just the frontier. And when we talk about the frontier, we're defining it as highly capable models that are in existence now or that will come out in the future. And so in relation to countries, there are different stages of thinking about this. Some are quite advanced and mature. Look at what America's been doing, the White House Accords, etc. EU has been pursuing legislation and been thinking about this question. Other countries are much further behind, and it's understandable given the fact that this technology is emerging so quickly. So I think just getting everybody around the table is a big achievement in the first place, but then we do want some actual outputs out of the summit, which is why we've laid out very clearly our objectives and what we're seeking to ascertain.
And one thing you said is you want to get more from businesses. What in particular is it you're looking for from private enterprise on AI?
So I think it's important that we have a dialogue with business in general on AI, because we want to ensure that adoption happens and so that we can actually distill the benefits of AI across society. You know, this needs to be something that we all benefit from, whether that is in our healthcare system, in the transport network, whether it is speeding up processes in businesses and making them more productive. So there's an adoption piece of work and a consumer confidence piece of work, but also a business confidence piece of work. But then we need to be making sure that we've created the correct environment for businesses to grow in AI itself, which is what we've been trying to do with our investment in skills, with our investment in compute, for instance, with our exascale announcement, and try and listen to exactly what does business need in this space, and with our regulatory regime that I spoke about.
Because in Onward's recent report on the generative AI revolution, we talked about the importance. You mentioned compute capacity in terms of a nation state. There's also, one of the things that we have discussed about is, do you have sovereign generative AI capacity as well? Because there is going to be a balance here, whereas you do have to collaborate internationally with like-minded countries, but also individual countries will want to make sure they have their own capacity for stuff as well. You know, is that something that you think is likely to feature in the conversations?
So we set up our own frontier task force that has been looking at this very question. And the reality is that you can't gain any sovereignty in this space unless you do have the compute capacity, and we are ahead of the game in that in relation to AI when you compare us to other governments. So we've already got our AI research resource in Bristol. We've got our 900 million exascale project that we've announced in Edinburgh, and we're also looking at what else do we need to do around the ingredients to get some of that sovereignty. So we need the right skills, for instance. Recently announced that we're expanding our master's conversion course in AI increasing our doctoral places in AI so we can grow our own as well as attract top talent from around the world. But I do think it is important that we're looking at all of this, yes.
And obviously within DCIT, AI is just one thing you do. How much time do you personally think about AI as part of your portfolio?
Well, a lot more than normal at the moment with the summit coming up, which you would expect. And it's one of our 5 critical technologies. So it does feature front and center. But I also think of it as, whilst it's one of the 5, it's also the foundational aspect, isn't it, of it? Because reality is it is turbocharging our research across the board and supporting so many sectors. And a lot of people say is going to be the technology of this generation. I think that's underestimating its transformative ability. So I think it is important that we give it the amount of weight that it deserves within my department. But it is just one aspect. I've not neglected anything else, if that's what you're
No.
at.
What I was going to come on to was, which I asked someone who's very involved in Google on AI, and they said, how much of your time on AI do you spend being excited, and how much do you spend being worried about it?
So I think it's 2 sides of the same coin. The whole reason why we're prepared to recognise these risks and put up guardrails and work internationally as well as domestically is because the opportunities are so phenomenal. And that's the best word to describe it. If you look at what's already happening with our use of AI in our NHS, in terms of actually improving outcomes and literally saving lives, that's just a snapshot of what the future holds. It also has the potential to enable us to deal with massive global challenges like climate change, to support developing countries on issues like food inequality, to helping with things like reducing the burden on teachers and doctors so they can spend more time actually doing their job. So it is a phenomenal set of opportunities. That's why it's so important that we grip these risks. And something that I think we are being quite forthright and open and transparent about is that, yes, the risks are big. They're massive. And we're not going to pretend otherwise, but that's why we need to be proactive and we need to grip these risks so that we can get those opportunities. Because
the way Onward we've sort of categorised, but just with regards to generative AI, is opportunities, shocks and threats. And we've talked about the threats and what they may be and the opportunities as well. But the shocks are also going to be potentially quite big. And one stat that we mentioned in that report was that 19% of all jobs was half of their worth disappear thanks to AI. And that's sort of much bigger than the Industrial Revolution that happened. And we know it's coming. We can see it's coming. And I think managing that both obviously in a policy, but in a political sense, it's going to be a big challenge because that is going to have a big dislocation to the labour market, but also our skills base.
Yes, I think there's a few things to say here. I hear what you're saying about the actual degree of change. But if we look back to 1940, 60% of the jobs that exist now did not exist in 1940. So technology does always change the labour market. So that's the first thing that we need to recognise. We shouldn't naturally subscribe to this view that it is going to be always negative on the labour market. You know, if you look at the impact it can have on teachers and enabling them to produce tailor-made lesson plans and support individual pupil needs and actually reduce the amount of admin they're doing so they can have more time in the classroom. And the same is true of doctors. They can have more time actually with patients and enable them to produce better outcomes. A few weeks ago I was seeing how money that we've invested via UKRI was actually enabling brain surgeons to use AI to have, in effect, access to a catalogue of different surgeries so that they could have better outcomes of their surgeries. Now, that is a fantastic contribution to people's jobs. It enables them to do their jobs better and also do the bits that they like more. It will also create new jobs that we haven't even thought of now. But yes, it will change the labour market, and we have to, again, be alive to that and not bury our heads in the sand. And that's why our education system has to change to match that. Firstly, we need to start off with a broader based knowledge, and that's certainly how what the Prime Minister has started on at his announcement at conference, and the moving away from A-levels and expanding the amount of subjects that students would study, including English and maths, to a higher level. The other thing that we need to do is develop and foster a culture of lifelong learning. That's something that I started when I was in the Department for Education, and we launch LLE as a government in 2025, which basically allows you to study modularized university study throughout your life in basically blocks so you can upskill and reskill. And upskilling and reskilling will be incredibly important, given the fact that our children, our grandchildren, they won't just maybe do 5 careers in their life, they might do 10. And so they will have to be quite nimble and agile. So we have to have the education system to match those changing needs.
And when you talk about how it changed the jobs market, it reminds me of when Steve Jobs was creating the first Macintosh. He just was originally going to be called Bicycle, because he saw it as the bicycle for the mind, to not necessarily replace what you're doing, but to sort of accompany and make it faster and more efficient. But I think it is taking people on that journey with you, because a lot of the AI discussion at the moment is amongst rooms like this and people who are very engaged in the topic. But for the wider population, not just in the UK and beyond, it can seem quite remote as something that's quite hard to see, but then it could all speed up quite quickly. People could see big changes around them in their workplaces and in their jobs.
But it can also have amazing things happening around them, from use of cleaner, greener transport, like we said before, and also the way that their kids are educated, or their access to doctors, which certainly fills my in tray in terms of constituents. So I think that they will be seeing changes before their eyes. This is transformative, and I don't think we should downplay that word. And it will be very visible for people, but in a positive way as well.
And then finally, before we throw out the floor, what would you describe as success for next week?
Well, we've been quite transparent about what our objectives are. So our objectives are gaining more shared understanding on what the risks are, with an appreciation that those risks are still emerging. So we need to establish a network together to be able to research going forward how we're going to stay on top of those risks. We need to make sure that this is the beginning of the journey. So what I want to see is that this summit is the first of many, held obviously in different countries, not just part of a formal structure, because there needs to be this focus work on this area, and we need to do it globally, not just domestically. And we need to consider and look at some of the stuff that we have already started in this country, like our task force, and how we can build that up, and what is the next chapter of that, and how can we utilise that for the rest of the world.
And capitalising on the UK's convening power, which I think with this particular topic is somewhere where we really do have a great advantage over many other countries. Yeah,
and in many ways we're ahead of them in terms of our thinking and expertise in this area. We're investing more than any country in the world in AI safety. So it's important that we are not only convening them, but we're sharing some of our understanding and our thinking in this space.
Great, thank you very much. Well, let's now open this out, and I'm sure there are plenty of questions. We've got roving microphones, so if you could just say who you are and where from, and we'll keep the questions as tight as possible, get as many as possible. We'll take the gentleman here and then the gentleman here. Thank you.
Just on, yeah. Hi, Robin Bisson from Research Professional News. I wanted to ask about the idea that's done the rounds about the UK kind of playing some role as host of like an international body for AI. There's been talk about something a bit like the IAEA. Demis Hassabis, I think, said today maybe there could be something like the International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, but for AI. So, and with the UK's kind of research expertise, that maybe looks like something where the country could play a role. So I wanted to ask if that's still something that is under consideration.
Thank you. And the gentleman here.
Nicholas Beale from CITEB. What you're saying is extremely encouraging, and the focus on the frontier models and developing them in a safe way is clearly very important. There's another aspect of this, of course, which is how they're deployed. And I wonder if I could just draw your attention to the incoming Lord Mayor, Michael Manelli, who's got an initiative on AI ethics, specifically working with professional institutions to train members of those professional institutions in deploying AI in a safe way. And that might be quite usefully complementary to the frontier task force work that you're doing.
Thank you. So there's a question, one about an international regulatory body and the actual deployment of AI ethics.
Yeah, so these are all things that we've been thinking about and that we will discuss in the summit. And we have been thinking about what is the future of our task force, because that is a collection of some of the world's greatest experts when it comes to this field. So it's certainly something that we are thinking about. I think that's all I can say at this stage. And then in relation to, I've forgotten this question now.
This question about the deployment of AI
Deployment,
ethics.
So safety is important across all sections of the AI life cycle, so absolutely. And something that I've been talking about a lot is something called responsible capability scaling, where companies have policies, just like you would expect, in effect, in other sectors, where they have safety mechanisms in place and they have protocols for what they would do if they identify problems. So what do they do? At what threshold do they pause their work? At what threshold do they completely stop their work and alert government, etc.? But some of that safety processes need to happen at the deployment stage as well. And we know with a lot of these models that some of the learning actually happens at the deployment stage. And so that is something that we will continue to talk about in the summit, and we've got sections dedicated to those areas.
Great, thank you. Some more questions, please. Let's go for the lady at the back. And is there anyone else near the back there while we're there? And yeah, there's a gentleman just beside in the red tie as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Silky Carlo, the director of Big Brother Watch. The question that I have is about any reflection that DCIT is doing on its current uses of AI, specifically the counter-disinformation unit, because there's a big contract that went to Logically, an AI company, to do counter-disinformation monitoring, which has been scrutinised by us and significantly in the press, for doing inaccurate monitoring or classification of accurate content as misinformation. It hasn't always been impartial. In cases, misinformation has been spread. And we found that 60% of the CDU's content flags to Twitter didn't actually breach Twitter rules. So isn't this an example, and we've seen this week how much even the BBC struggles sometimes to define and diagnose disinformation. Isn't this an example of where perhaps the use of AI is inappropriate when it comes to freedom of speech and classifying people's speech and potentially leading to it being censored?
Thank you. And the gentleman in the red tie.
Hi, Sammy. To pick up on your analogy around airline flight, one of the key developments in the safety of that was transparency following crashes. How is, in such a world where there's proprietary information and IP around AI models, how is the UK government going to regulate and crack open models that are owned by private individuals or companies?
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think starting with the last one, I'll move to the first. So around that, I think transparency is important, and what the Prime Minister managed to achieve at National Tech Week was an agreement by the leading companies to share their models with the government for evaluation, and we've been working with those companies around that, and our task force is the body in which we've been able to look at that work and working with other partners as well. And I think it is important that we can support. There is a role for what the companies need to do, absolutely, but there is also a role in terms of third-party evaluations to assist in and giving confidence around the safety of frontier AI. And then in relation to the question at the beginning, so I think it is very important that we champion and stand up for free speech, and I have long done that throughout my ministerial career, and a big believer in enabling people to be able to share their opinions as a vehicle in which society can also progress. And when it comes to disinformation and misinformation, I think it's really difficult as well, because one person's misinformation is another person's truth. And when it comes to situations like what's happening in Gaza or in Israel, it's obviously a fast-paced environment in which things are developing quite quickly. So if we take that as an example of what we've done in that space, is we followed the same principles that I took to the online safety bill, where we said to companies, no, they need to be getting rid of illegal content, which I think we would all subscribe to. And they should be adhering to their own terms and conditions. Again, I would hope that we'd all subscribe to that, because that's basically saying they need to do what they said they were going to do, which is fair. And that's what we're expecting to happen. And any use of our civil servants and bodies that we utilise as a department is not straying out of that remit. But I do think it is important that we're alive to the modern threats to democracy, which do include misinformation and disinformation. And AI can be a powerful and worrying tool in that, If we look at the deepfakes, for instance, that has the potential to even derail elections if we're not careful. And that's why it's one of the topics that we will be discussing at the summit, and there are live work streams in this space.
And I think actually, with regards to the general election likely next year, I think, this is going to really come to the fore in terms of the role that AI is playing in this. And I think there's lots of campaigners, but also bodies who are concerned about the role, particularly deepfakes and misinformation can play. Right, should we take some more questions, please? Can we take the gentleman there with the glasses and at the back there? For the back, that's it. He's waving his hands very helpfully. And then the other gentleman with the glasses who's there as well. I'm not just picking on people with the glasses because I wear them. Is this one at the back here? Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. I'm Ben Reid. I'm the Director of Innovation and Technology at the CBI. So I'm delighted to hear a couple of things that really resonate with our members, particularly the proportional approach, not a centralised approach to regulation of AI, which has been really important to our members. And the second is a really positive attitude to the productivity advantages of adopting AI. I think the members really see it as augmenting rather than replacing in nearly all circumstances when we're in a deep labour shortages crisis. The question was about, across our members we have a huge number that are very sophisticated in AI, but others that are just dipping their toe in the water. I wonder what you'd say to the rank and file business in the UK about the value of the AI summits to them.
I want to take this other gentleman here as well.
Hi, good afternoon. Joseph Ambridge here from Politico. I just wanted to ask, obviously next week is the international summit here in the UK, but as you mentioned, the UK government published its AI white paper back in March and is yet to respond to that. And I was just curious whether the government thinks it's appropriate to respond and set out its domestic AI strategy ahead of hosting an international summit, and also whether the government has made any decisions yet regarding potential legislation around AI, obviously with the King's Speech also fast approaching, or alternatively, whether there'll be any AI-related amendments to the data bill, perhaps.
Thank you.
It's like 10 questions in one.
Yeah, exactly. Let's sum it up by legislating on AI. What's your plan?
We are not afraid to legislate, absolutely. But what we are saying, and I hope that came across in my speech, is that we shouldn't be rushing to implement very fixed solutions before we properly understand the problem. And we don't properly understand the problem at the moment because the risks are still emerging. That's why we've brought in the experts in-house to try and help us. It's why we're having this conversation on a global stage as well. It's why we're asking the companies to do more, but we're also saying countries need to do more too. But our tact and way forward in this country is not to just rush to legislate when we don't actually know all of the answers yet. And I think that is a signs of a responsible government that is listening and that is going to get this right. And then the other question was...
the gentleman from the CBI asking about rank and file businesses and your message on AI to them.
So I think that's a good question because I suppose, obviously, this summit is focused very clearly on the frontier. But I think what that does is gives people the confidence that if we can get these aspects right, if we can grip these risks, if we can be proactive, then we can ensure that AI can be deployed throughout society, that businesses can utilize the next generation of models that are coming out next year. And that's why this summit is so timely as well. Because the risks are really big and would impact us all in a number of different ways. But we want to be able to seize these transformative opportunities.
Thank you. Where's Florence gone? Oh, there you are. Sorry, thank you. So anyone on this side? I think no, it's on this side. Can we get these two gentlemen here?
I forgot. The Politico also asked me about the white paper.
Yes.
I can give you a scoop. We're not delivering our white paper before the summit. So there you go.
It's good to know. It'll be a slightly quieter few days then. There's the gentleman on the edge here and the gentleman beside him. Thank you.
Hi, Tim Smith from Sifted. You mentioned that the UK is ahead of the game when it comes to compute. When compared, 900 million compared to 4 billion invested into Anthropic by Amazon, 11 billion invested into OpenAI by Microsoft, how can nation states really compete with that level of funding?
Yeah.
Please question, and just next to him, please.
Hi, Benjamin Hilton, 80,000 hours. You mentioned it's obviously true that generally technological change complements human labor and it ends up increasing wages and you get new jobs. But there are two other things to worry about. One is frictions. It can take time for the market to evolve, and that leads to potentially years or decades with higher unemployment rates. And also, if we continue to make advances, and as you said, that could happen very fast, we might find that we can automate a huge proportion of things that humans are currently doing. And in that sort of scenario, economic models suggest that actually technology tends to become substitutory for jobs. So what's the government doing to prepare to protect workers in those sort of scenarios we might see in years or decades to come?
Thank you.
So on the second point first, one of the topics that we are discussing at the Global Summit with our international partners is actually the risks societally from frontier AI, and one of those is the potential impact on the labour market. But as I said before, yes, there are risks, but there are also opportunities for removing some of the bits of our jobs that distract us from our actual purpose, like doctors, like education. And there will always be a value on humans doing certain roles. Absolutely, I strongly believe that. And it will create new jobs. And I think that is the missing part of the conversation. And it will make our lives easier in many ways. But some of these questions are known, aren't they? They're debated. You know, how will AI change different parts of society will depend on how AI develops. And at the moment, it is emerging at record speed compared to other technologies. And some of these are unknown. And that's why we need to continue to do research. We need to continue to stay hand in hand with industry, with experts, with civil society, while we need to have these conversations globally and not just work in silos. But I don't think anybody's got the answers on these things. That's the whole point. That's the reason why we're not rushing for legislation, for instance, because we need to better understand this area and we need to properly examine it, not just domestically, but globally. And on compute, I just want to clarify, when I say we're ahead of the game, I mean compute in relation for AI specifically, not just compute in general. And obviously it is not comparable to the likes of the companies that you mentioned. But then what we need to use that compute for is different. So we don't need as much compute capacity as the likes of Microsoft, etc. But we do also need to do more in terms of working with our partners on partnership of compute so that we can share resources. We need to continue to talk to industry as well on this.
Thank you. And I think we've got time for one last round of questions. Let's just take 3 if we can. Go here, here, and here, please. Thank you.
Hi, Peter from Digital Capital. It was really great to hear you talk about industry adoption. Really good to hear that from the Secretary of State. It's just a bit on that, in terms of life after the summit, if you can imagine such a thing. Is there a specific plan to address industry adoption? Because I think what we're seeing at the moment is AI companies addressing the same needs, the same markets, all very concentrated in very specific services. And obviously, with Digital Catapult, we're trying to help expand that. Just wondered if there's any more plans from the government or any policy ideas from the government in order to expand that even further into other sectors so they can all benefit from adoption.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentleman here.
Thanks. My name's Neil Ross from Tech UK. I just want to really endorse your point about not rushing to legislate. That's definitely going to be a big relief for lots of particularly smaller companies and scale-ups who are developing their technology. But the question I wanted to ask you is, you talked about in your speech about operationalizing the summit. So I want to ask you what might that look like, and how can everyone in this room get involved once you get past what you might agree on the second and get on to putting it into practice?
Thank you. And then last question here.
Thanks. It's Dan Guthrie from the Alliance for Intellectual Property. And if we can just go away from the frontier to the real risk today, which is that lots of creators are having their content exploited by AI firms without their permission, for commercial purposes, without their consent or licensing, and not getting any remuneration. And just wondered if you could have a view on that, please.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, well, where to start? So on the adoption point, I think we have an opportunity here to somewhat leapfrog in the UK in terms of our adoption. We're doing a lot of work with DBT in this space, and we've already got things like Innovate UK have got a fund that they've been administering called Bridge AI in 4 high growth sectors, and there's more work that needs to be done on this. And then in terms of operationalising the summit, so I sort of see it as we've got the road to the summit, which is where we've been trying to talk to as many people as possible. Across government, I've been asking other ministers to do the same so that we can really have this in detail conversation, not just about the frontier, but other aspects as well. And then after the summit, which we hope to get some key outcomes, and we'll see what next week brings, then I think we need to continue that work and obviously culminate in our response to the white paper this year. And then in relation to other risks that AI presents, which is not the frontier, I just want to pull up on one thing that you said. So you said that risks here and now. I would argue that the risks of the frontier are not some hypothetical maybe, never. They are actually in existence now as well. And Yoshua Bengio describes this in a really good way. So he says, when we think about climate change, just because we have droughts that are happening now as a result of climate change doesn't mean that we wouldn't deal with stuff that's going to happen in the future as well. So you can do both. And we are doing both. So what we're doing is we're working very closely with DCMS on this very topic and trying to produce a code of conduct between both the AI sector and the creative sector. And whilst AI is presenting some of the very real problems that you have referenced, it also presents some of the potential solutions. So if you speak to some commentators, then they would tell you that they think that watermarking will be part of the solution, or that AI technology that can detect whether it was produced by AI will be part of the solution. Now, they're debated, because whether that will be robust enough, the proof will be in the pudding, and that depends on how it comes out after it's been developed. But these are all the things that we're talking to industry about, and also staying close to the sector. But more will be coming out with that code of conduct.
Great. Well, I just want to thank you very much, Michelle, for your time today and covering so much ground on AI, both in your speech and your remarks, and from all the questions you've had, have all been really, really insightful. Next week, obviously, is going to be a very big moment, and as we heard from one of the questions, there will be life after the AI summit, or at least I hope so. And at that point, I think we've really interested to see how the policy conversation develops and how the UK can secure that leading convening role in shaping it, because when we think about a lot of the stuff we talk about in Westminster, a lot of the policy debate, in 5-10 years' time, this is actually one of the top ones that matters more above anything else. There's the biggest potential to change, improve and shape our country in the future. So it's great to see the government on the front foot. And onward, we are obviously continuing to press ahead with our Science Superpower programme, which has produced our recent Wired for Success report on DSIT and how we can make sure we've got the best apparatus for delivering on the UK's science superpower ambitions. We've got plenty more research coming, not least the next AI paper coming out the next couple of days to hopefully chime with the summit with some more thoughts on that, but plenty more in the future. So for all of you, please do follow our work, subscribe to our newsletter so you know all the work we're doing on that. But I'd like to put your hands together to thank the Secretary of State for her time today.